We will now call to order the meeting of August 31st, 2020. Senate is now in session. Would the Deputy Speaker please call the roll?
Yes. Senator Ari Narkin.
Present.
Senator Baker.
Here.
Senator Bila.
Present.
Senator Hawk. Senator Hawk. Senator Cosme.
Here.
Senator Leong.
Present.
Senator Liverpool.
Here.
Senator Shangasa.
Here.
Senator Ramirez.
Here.
Senator Rogers.
Here.
Senator Salini.
Here.
Senator Dome.
Here.
Senator Tulloch.
Here.
Oh, she says she's here. Her mic isn't working. Okay, so everyone, 13 present.
All right, so we're now going to sing the Genesee. If you would like to sing with me, you can. Otherwise, you can mute, because the recording will come back very interesting if we're all trying to sing at once. So I'm happy to just sing by myself, and everyone else can sing with their mutes muted if that's what you want to do. Full many fair and famous streams beneath the sun there be, yet more to us than any seems our own dear Genesee. We love her banks and stately falls, for to our minds they bring our dear old alma mater's halls, where sweetest memories cling. As flows the river gathering force along her steadfast way, may we along life's devious course grow stronger day by day, and may our hearts where'er we roam forever loyal be to our beloved college home beside the Genesee. All right, we'll now move into open forum. Are there any items for open forum? This is a time where anyone from the student body, any senators, any members of SA government, you don't have to be in SA government, you can just be a member of the student body, can share anything that's going on campus, off campus, that you just want to talk about, have a discussion about. This is the time to raise concerns, and they don't necessarily have to get resolved during this time, but it's a place to start those conversations and to make sure that we're aware of your needs around the campus. Senator Tome.
Yes, hello everyone. Welcome back to our first Senate meeting. I did want to bring something up that I've talked a lot about with other SA government members, people outside of SA government, as well as other senators. And this is something that I think is really important to address as soon as we can. I do understand that this will probably not get resolved today or anytime soon, but I think this is something that we need to continue working on. And that is that over the summer, we have seen a lot of grievances within Senate and within SA government that a lot of people felt alienated and undermined, especially by the SA government leadership, in ways where we felt like we couldn't really do anything, where we felt like we can take ownership, actually represent our student body. There were concerns about just not getting the credit we deserve for the work that we've been putting in. And I know that a lot of us, every one of us actually, is incredibly passionate about the things we are doing. That's why we're on Senate. And I feel it's really bad not being able to do the work that we want to do. So something that I do want to discuss is what has happened over the summer. I would be really happy to hear some thoughts from senators or other members within SA government about how they might have felt alienated. And then also from the other side of people about what might have happened. I do want to keep this in the context of what has happened, what can we do better, how can we move forward. So I do want to talk now a little bit about it, but definitely meet with the head of the different branches in SA government to discuss this further. Communication collaboration always has been a problem within SA government. COVID-19 has not made this easier. but I do think that this needs to be addressed now and that there are ways we can solve it. So I would be really happy to hear from anyone else. So I yield the floor.
Is there any other discussion on that point? Senator Tome?
I'm so sorry. I do want to make this a little bit clearer. I'm not saying this so that we all can stay quiet. I do want this to be on public record so that we can hold each other accountable. So I'm actually calling on SA leadership and also from people within Senate and SA government who can talk a little bit more about what has happened this summer and how they might have felt.
I don't have the raise hand function, but consider me doing that.
Connor?
So yeah, I don't really know how to navigate this given the limitations of my role and also just sort of how the summer's been. So I'm gonna do my best, but if I skirt the lines, I apologize in advance. I think that this has been a really tough summer and just a really tough situation given the situation surrounding as a result of COVID and those resulting consequences on our ability to communicate, on our ability to reach to each other, on our ability to really work as an organization, but also we were fragile and not really on the right foot beforehand. We've sort of, as an institution, I've been here, I think going on 3 years. And there have always been problems with communication there, and they've almost always gone unsettled, and people have felt jaded and they've left the institution, and people have resigned as senators and in other capacities. They just haven't been happy. So I think that we really do have structural problems that I think need to be addressed. And I don't mean to undermine that when I talk about the shock that brought to our system. Additionally, SA is not really built to work over the summer. The normal mechanisms of having to check in with Senate every week, having to be publicly accountable to an open forum, none of those things happened. They're not built to happen. And to a certain extent, it's not really, when they wrote the Constitution, they weren't really expecting people to need to do advocacy over the summer or even be able to pull it off over Zoom. It sort of assumed everyone being in the physically similar location, being able to be together when classes are in session. And so I think that we could have done a much better job when it comes to giving people structure, giving people a vision for how the summer was going to look. I could have helped with that as well. I fully want to own up to that. It was a really chaotic time. I could have helped with transition more. And with the new faces that I think that SA is seeing, with the really passionate people who got elected on a platform of accountability, justice, and like systemic change, I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose them. And I want to make sure that we're on the right foot in the beginning of this year to make sure that they can continue to push for the things that they got elected to do. So I'm going to yield because I'm running out of time, but that's sort of my position on things. Thanks.
Senator Liang?
Cool. Yeah, so for posterity and also for the record, I just want to say very quickly, we are all adults here. We are all over the age of 18, presumably, potentially, unclear. But like, I feel like we should be responsible for interpersonal communication. We should be responsible for project management. Like we've been in college for like 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Like we should all know how to communicate with people over the summer, especially since we've been elected to these positions, presumably because we have the ability to communicate and to advocate for students. So then also for the record, just so we're clear for posterity, the issues that we were dealing with were very, very important and demanded that everyone be sort of all hands on deck. So the first thing we were dealing with was COVID, right? The transition, the way the university handled sort of information dissemination, as well as the ways in which international students were affected by various quarantine guidelines, as well as domestic students' various quarantine guidelines. Not only that, but we were also dealing with several social movements happening outside of our window. These social movements, Black Lives Matter, Abolish Greek Life, for example, right, demand a certain ability of, or a certain degree of sensitivity, and should be entirely independent from sort of the mechanizations of like, oh yeah, like student government has always had these issues and like all this stuff. Yeah, like maybe student government hasn't really had the best track record for dealing with these problems. But I think this was the summer we really needed to step up, especially since these are issues that we sort of deal with on a daily basis as queer people or as people of color or as any sort of minority group, be it international students or like domestic students who are on this campus. I guess like that to sort of set up the context, I think we really need to talk about sort of like the ways in which the executive branch has perhaps gotten in the way of our ability to actually advocate for our causes and the communities that we are part of. I think that this is really important to talk about, and I guess like, yeah, yield to the floor once again.
Senator Srangasa?
Yeah, so I just wanted to bring a distinction between structural issues and interpersonal issues. And I think that it's a fair thing to say that, you know, SA wasn't necessarily designed to function in the summer structurally, and I think that that could have been fixed. However, I think that, and you know, Senator Tom, you can correct me, but I think that the issues that Senator Tom is talking about here have to do with more interpersonal issues and just communication issues as people could communicate with each other. And so what I mean with this is that, like Amanda said, like Senator Liang said, most of the cases we were dealing with were cases where, you know, individuals in the executive in the executive were on the way of projects that we were doing. I'm only open with this because of these are also the conversations that I've had with exec. These are conversations that I've had with a lot of senators, but I think that, you know, the issues that we're facing and issues that we really want to emphasize is that there's the communication where the communication is really broken is when it comes to, one, us working together as senators, but two, also the relationship between exec and the Senate, because most of the issues we felt like, I personally felt like a lot of the issues that I was working on were hijacked in cases where, you know, I had to be looped in issues that I either started or either, like, you know, projects that I was like heading, and then, you know, I find out that there's been significant steps taken on these projects, and then I get looped in things which I didn't really appreciate. Also, I want to emphasize again that these have been issues that I've expressed countless times, and these are issues that I've had with individuals, and I think that that's where the conversation should start, right? I think that if we're going to have a productive conversation on this, it should start from where, how do we talk to each other within Senate, and how do we talk to each other? How does Senate talk with the either of the branches? And sort of like, and this is just like, I guess, a point of personal privilege as like a new senator, just like really finding out what's really the relationship between all these branches, you know, who's on top of who, if that's the case, who gets to tell someone else who, like what, because I felt like there's been also a lot of bullying from, you know, other branches towards senators, cases where people have been told not to do things which aren't necessarily constitutional, and we're not into that. So just in the last few seconds, it's one thing to advise someone, but it's also very important to refer back to the Constitution and says that I'm telling you this because this is what the Constitution says. I'm going to yield.
Okay, so before we continue, I just wanted to clarify that the initial point of discussion that I think Senator Tome brought up, from my understanding, it was with regard to the sort of action plan for where we go from here for the semester. So trying to, as we think about, you know, the time limit for open forum, thinking about making sure that we're focusing on sort of a concrete wrap up, if you will, at the end of this discussion for where we go from here. With that, I'm going to yield to Senator Salimi.
Yeah, I'm just gonna try to keep it short. I do think over the summer we, as everyone's mentioned, we were working over like on different projects and stuff because of like the pandemic, and everyone was like, I don't think anyone is prepared for like what happened. And as people have pointed out, Senate's not designed to work over the summer. But I do think there were a lot of problems, as Sohail and Leah mentioned, and Amanda too, with like executive kind of maybe confusing the lines of like where they're supposed to step in, and like trying to take control over like of like the senator's project. And then there were problems with like communication, them telling the senators that they'll loop them in, but nothing of the sort ever happened, because I remember there was this one instance where I had this project idea and I was told that I'd be looped into it and I could work on this, but I never got told anything about it. And then before I knew it, there's something like been worked out, and I had no idea that things had happened, and then all the credit was taken by the exec, which I mean, I personally think like if it was like an isolated incident, I'd be like fine, whatever. But it happened repeatedly with different senators, and everyone tried talking to executive about it, but every time they were like, fine, we'll work on it, we appreciate the feedback, but I didn't see anything coming out of it. Like I believe in second chances, and I believe in like reform, and I think that like there's room for improvement and for like actually doing something about this kind of behavior. But I do think like it's been a consistent problem, and moving forward it's something that can be worked on, because it's not something that can be rectified, but just actually listening to it and not just saying that you're hearing the feedback and you appreciate it, but like actually taking it into account and doing something about it would help. Because if this continues into the fall, into the academic year, then things that should not happen, or that some people might not like you know, like they might happen, and no one wants like no one wants that. So with that, I yield to Senator Tome.
Thank you so much, Senator Salimi. I really appreciate everyone speaking out about this, and I think this makes it clear that those are not isolated incidents, but that this is a systematic pattern of power abuse, using power not appropriately to the Constitution, to what we think is appropriate. So what I would really like to do is call upon President Gorka and Vice President Haddad to speak about this, about what has been happening from their side, talk about what we can do better, and actually offer action items that they will consider and actually act upon, and that we will follow up on. I yield to President Gorka, and then I would like to yield to Vice President Haddad.
So just because of the way that we've been doing this, I've sort of been yielding directly to members of the gallery for the purpose of open forum. And since we do have Senator Kazmi also on the list, is it possible to run through any senators that have additional comments, and then we can go to President Gorka and Vice President Haddad?
I don't mind speaking after the President and the Vice President. They can go first.
Okay, President Gorka.
Okay, yes. Just to kind of address the feelings and sentiments of this meeting, I definitely, from communications I've had with individual senators, I recognize the issues in, you know, my leadership style in particular, and I've had this communication, this conversation with those individuals and Mark as well, and part of the feedback forms that we had distributed through our advisors during orientation, I'm hoping to take that in and really adjust for the future, because I think a lot of the missteps on my part were not necessarily realizing in the moment, miscommunication. That's stuff I'm going to try to be more cognizant of moving forward. Because I do think that we can blame circumstance, but also I think I'm still growing in the position. So I want to acknowledge that I will do better with communicating. As for jurisdiction, that's something I'm going to be discussing with Xander as well, so I can figure out, you know, where exactly do I fit in with an essay. And because I don't want myself to be I don't want like to cause divisions, and I want us to have a productive next 2 semesters, because the student body is going to need us as representatives, because as like, you know, various senators had mentioned, there's a lot of topics of conversation, there's a lot of issues that we need to address. So I'm looking forward to, you know, reviewing the feedback and seeing what I can do to improve in the future, because I want to improve. I want to be a better leader for SA, and I want to make sure that, you know, branches are working cohesively. And that's stuff that, you know, I can't necessarily like prove other than giving it time and showing through my action that my approach will change. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. And I apologize for anybody that I might have, you know, treated unfairly or had hurt in any way. I really am going to try to improve for the future. So I just wanted to say that sentiment, but I'll leave it at that and yield.
Vice President Haddad.
Can you guys hear me? Okay, I'm sitting in the library, so I'm going to be a little careful like how loud I speak. I'm very glad that we started with this conversation, and I do want to say like it's like so nice to see all of you. Justina mentioned a lot of what I was going to say, but I do want to add a few things. Just because over the summer I had stretches where I was able to keep up, some stretches where I was extremely frustrated at like the way the work got to. But I do want to say, like, working throughout the entire summer on all these initiatives, there were times where we couldn't really control what was going on. And I'm not talking about the work that we do, we're talking about like how much was happening in school in terms of like the petitions that we had to work with, and not being able to work over summer really affected it, and it changed our leadership style. It changed the way Justina and I worked. It changed everything. Just like, so you guys know, the way Justina and I have worked over the past 3 months, we've already like, at this point, like probably yelled at each other at least like 100 times by now. So like we are working on our dynamic, and working over summer hasn't helped that because we weren't able to like communicate clearly. So like if you're trying to see what we're going to do to change over this semester, basically everything, because now we're going to meet with you guys weekly. We're going to work on this new dynamic. We're going to like change the leadership style that we have to fit the different committees that will be working, the different proposals that are working. So over the summer, it was kind of like, I feel, the way I see it at least, it was an introduction to SA, to me at least. It was trying to see what work is being done, trying to see what people are interested in. But now that like everyone's back together and we actually can hold Senate meetings together and we can work together on things, our entire dynamic's going to change. Okay, so yes, it's going to be more communication. Yes, it's going to be all of that, but we're not just talking about this blindly. Like everything is going to change in terms of the meetings, in terms of who's in charge of what. It was just that over the summer when we were looking at things, and honestly, the amount of emails that we were receiving on different things, it was really hard to juggle that at some point. And I do want to recognize that we weren't able to do the right thing at some points, yes, but over summer, there wasn't a set way for Senate to work. There wasn't a set way for us to work. So we do want to kind of talk about all of that throughout the next couple of weeks, see what we can do, and kind of change that style. I guess I don't want to become too repetitive, so I'll just yield.
All right, Senator Cosme.
Yep, thank you. So one of the key things that I think I've talked about in Senate before, and might have gotten too passionate about it, but like I'm going to try to address them like the best way I can, is I simply like generally do not understand the view of bureaucracy behind which like we all have these conversations, which lead to us lacking a lot of directness. My only issue is when we do stand for accountability, it becomes essential from like a logistical point of view that we specifically point out issues that have practically happened at any given point and bring them out to the public. And I feel like if there are direct concerns, which I fully understand from the conversations that I've had with other senators, I believe they need to be actively brought out to the open. For the constituents deserve to know what they are, and they get to also make a decision on as to whether like how they feel about it, but also that it is part of public record, because that's the only way we can actually actively have accountability. By having subtle soft power conversations where we're pretending like there's an issue but not actively addressing it, we're only leaving room. And I don't mean to say this with any malice or prejudice, but in that situation, if exec decides not to do anything about anything, what we end up with is a situation where they can be like, all right, so since there was no specific issue pulled to us, we worked on it and we are making these promises, and like, you know, that pseudo change comes about that actually doesn't bring about real change. We are all grown-up adults. I am very confident, or I would like to be confident, that the president could take direct confrontation about issues that she has been involved with or things that senators have felt have been problematic. And I'm sure we as adults can actively tell her that these are issues that we think are pertinent and she needs to address them in a public setting, because that again opens this entire issue up to accountability. And without that, I feel like we're lacking that active accountability framework and having issues within SA without actual direct confrontation. That's my spiel, and I'm sorry if it's offensive or hurtful to anyone, but I genuinely do believe we need to have a very direct, non-subtle, non-soft power, non-bureaucracy enabling conversation to actually get this sorted.
Parliamentarian Sahin.
All right. Hi, everyone. So I'm mostly just listening here and hearing that, you know, while a lot of it is interpersonal communication needing work, some things it has not changed since I've been a senator. While interpersonal communication is certainly important, I've also heard senators say that they were confused on the executive versus legislative branch divide and the responsibilities that fall in each. And I was wondering if senators wanted it, while there was a general training earlier in the summer, there was a more in-depth senator training. And I was wondering if senators wanted that training prior to the September 14th elections for the new senators. It's ultimately not my decision about when to host the senator training, but I'm involved in it. And I think that perhaps by having a training and not delaying it another 2 weeks, we could start providing you with the information to work within the bureaucracy and understand some of the structure. It's just an idea, and an idea in terms of moving forward in a concrete way. That's it. I yield.
Senator Liang.
Yeah.
Also, if senators want to just very briefly try to wrap things up, I was going to try and close up open forum around 8:30, or the specific issue within open forum. And then also, if you can react on that statement on something like that with the little reaction images to let me know if that's something that you're interested in. We can pursue that.
Can we have my time start from where it was? Awesome, thanks. Yeah, I think like just to sort of like follow up with what Sabit said and to be more direct, from what it sounds like the executive branch is having internal communication problems. At least the impression is from Mark, where you guys have been working through sort of these problems and have been like growing and like growing pains. But I do want to point out something really important. I think to say that the executive branch was ignorant of these problems, I think is largely false. I think that we've had a lot of one-on-one conversations, the senators, between the senators and the executive, in which we've pointed out, hey, you know, this seems to be a problem. Here are some constructive ways to solve it, and so forth and so forth. And I think that that's really important to point out for the record, right? Like, this isn't the first time we've had this conversation. In fact, this is probably the fourth time, the fifth time, the sixth time we've had this conversation, and yet nothing has changed. The only reason we're doing this in public forum is so that it can actually be written out, so people can actually be held accountable. We're frustrated. We're very done with the fact that, like, it seems like we've been giving feedback all summer, yet nothing has really happened, right? Like, we've been told that, like, oh, this is the first time we're hearing about this, and yet again, we are told again, it is the first time we are hearing about this. This is not the first time you've heard about this. And definitely the next time you hear about it, we can point at this record and say, this is the on-paper version of the last time you heard about this. So I guess we are frustrated. And what Leah added in the group chat, right? Like, what else will leadership do beyond being cognizant? Because it seems that some of these cognitions are pretty intuitive. On the basis of that, a more specific example is the fact that, like, you know, when we talk about race, when we talk about really complex sort of like political discussions, it is really important to remember who you are and what your experiences are and sort of what the experiences of everyone else are. given this, it is incredibly important to note when you are in a position of privilege, whether that be because of your racial identity, because of your sexuality, because of your gender, and so forth and so forth. And I think that's one of those things that really needs to be pointed out more directly. At the end of the day, right, there are going to be some people that are better for various conversations than another because they actually belong to the group that they are speaking on behalf, and not because they are representative to other groups, right? Like at the end of the day, like I'm always going to be Asian, I'm always going to be queer, and I'm always going to be a woman, right? Like, so that's just sort of, I guess, like something to point out more explicitly. I yield my time.
Senator Tome?
Yeah, thank you so much, Senator Liang, and everyone else who has spoken up. I can actually only echo what Senator Liang has said, and after listening to this more, I came to this with a positive mindset of wanting change, wanting to grow from this because we're all adults. We've been in college for a while. We all have worked on projects. We've all have tried to create change in some way, but still, I feel really disappointed with what we have talked about today because I'm hearing the same things I've heard all summer. And it's definitely been a few weeks since we've brought forward those concerns in private. So I don't want to hear anything more, everything will change. I'll be more cognizant of what has happened. I want to hear concrete action steps that we can help you accountable to about what will happen. So I do want to yield the rest of my time to President Gorka or Vice President Haddad to actually make specific action steps that they will take. It doesn't need to be a promise, but I want to hear from you what you're going to do next with what we have just said.
So
Yeah,
I guess I can.
President Gorka or Vice President Haddad.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, and I was actually going to message the leadership chat in a bit because I want to. I'm trying to think. I need to really reflect on a little bit of feedback and what kind of mechanisms we can put in place. Honestly, it's going to be harder also with us not being in person. But I could probably bring something to the next Senate because I do think that, you know, it's a mixture of trying to put more things in place, mechanisms, outlining jurisdictions, in addition to really taking in the feedback that we've had in the forums from my one-on-one conversations the last 2 weeks with senators to see, sorry, I got distracted by the chat, to see what specifically like we can put in place for ourselves, for the executive to know where our jurisdictions lie. And as I mentioned, like I'm hoping to as well discuss with Xander at a later time about what specifically, you know, the executive can do so we aren't overstepping with the jurisdiction of the committees, that we are, you know, keeping communication with folks. But I can bring something to the next Senate. I do really need to reflect on some of this feedback. But I appreciate this feedback because I hadn't had a chance to discuss with all the senators that have been affected. So knowing this, I'll need to have some time to work out a process. But I can bring something next Senate, and I guess I'll leave it at that. I don't know, Mark, if you had anything to add.
Mark, anything?
I can add, I just didn't know if I can like speak out of nowhere. Senator Tome, I feel like a very good way to address this is taking, because like I can't just give you like a solution for all of them at once, because that wouldn't make sense. It would also be very general and very bland, and we'd keep reacting the same way. So I feel like a very efficient way would be looking over everything that happened this summer, whether you want point by point or like department by department, everything that had happened. And like kind of, I feel like it would be more efficient to like kind of discuss how to fix those points instead of talking generally. Because if we just want to give you points randomly, I feel like it's going to be just a general conversation that no one here would want to hear. So a more efficient way, I feel, would be taking those problems that happened over summer, seeing what those problems were, and like we'd kind of discuss them one by one, see what we can do, share all that information. But I don't think there's like one general thing we could say right now that would kind of like just solve everything, because it'll be like step by step. It'll be for every single project or problem.
Okay. It looks like Senator Baker might have the floor. I'd like to try and wrap up this conversation, maybe have like one, maybe two more speakers. Otherwise, we can close that off and go to any other items for open forum. So Senator Baker.
Yes. So I think when it comes to leadership and working as a collective, tools are necessary, and to have a variety of tools is really important. Obviously, exec, like in some areas they're lacking tools, in some areas they need very different tools, and it seems like this week they're committed to really evaluating that and examining their tool chest, which is, you know, hopeful. In the same way with us, and I think we did that very well too. Like, there's the tool of, okay, I'm going to talk to you one-on-one, and then there's the tool of, we're going to do this publicly so we can have a level of accountability. I think there's a wonderful level of trust with the one-on-one conversations, and then a wonderful level of accountability with the public ones. I'm saying this to say, because this is sort of the first, not sort of, this is the first Senate meeting of the school year, I don't want it to set a precedent in how we handle things. So I don't want this frustration of, we need to do this publicly, which I entirely believe is the appropriate action, to say we need to do this publicly all the time, and that these one-on-one trusting relationships where you address something with someone individually doesn't work, you know? And so I just think it's important that we keep a variety of tools. And that's just me sort of responding to a few comments that just seem to come from a point of very valid frustration, and also a point of, like, this clearly is what we need to do to handle things, right? And I think that to judge everything that's going to happen throughout the year based on that would be a mistake. However, I mean, this might be necessary again, you know, but I would hope that this only.
Okay, you kind of cut off for me at the end there, but okay. All right.
I muted myself and I forgot to yield.
No worries. Senator Liang, last thoughts?
I just want to speak what happened in the chat onto the record formally. So will the executive agree to present at the next Senate meeting specific points of improvement that are measurable, ? Vice President Haddad replied, of course, and President Gorka replied, yes. I just want that to be on the formal record. I yield my time.
All right, is there any other discussion for open forum that is not related to this topic? So that could be anything that's happening in the student body. Ian?
Hi, everyone. My name is Ian. For those who don't know me, I currently chair the university's Committee for Political Engagement, and I'm also a co-chair of the university's Mental Health Task Force. I just wanted to share some exciting updates with you all that have happened over the summer that you should be made aware of, that are really, really cool. We've been working specifically first for the Mental Health Task Force. We've been working really, really hard on launching a new, what's called You Are Connected, which is a peer-to-peer support network that exists now through the Health Promotion Office. Basically what this is there are a bunch of undergraduate students, including myself, other co-chairs of the Mental Health Task Force, Active Minds, and others that have been trained to be kind of peer coaches for students that are encountering, they need some support for their mental well-being. I'm gonna drop the link right in the chat so you guys can check it out if you want. Just give me 1 second. So this is a really, really great program that's now been introduced primarily by John Mackey. He's really kind of been the one that, oops, I forgot. I didn't drop it in the chat, my bad. There we go. This has primarily been spearheaded by John Mackey, who is another co-chair of the Mental Health Task Force. He's been really kind of the one that is spearheading this. So definitely check it out. It's a really great new program. A lot of the coaches have like things on their doors that say that they're a coach. So if they live in a residence hall. The other thing that I wanted to mention that Izzy is going to talk about Izzy Murphy is going to talk about a little later in her community engagement updates are that, oh yes, all the lines are as well. Thank you, Eden. So this is something with CPE. We're kind of approaching the US presidential and elections in November. And so I'm really, really excited to be working with SA this semester and partnering with SA this semester on those initiatives. And I just wanted to mention that if anybody has any questions about like civic engagement stuff specifically that pertain to CPE, or about like mental health task force stuff, you can always reach out to me or any of the other co-chairs. It's John Mackey, Mackenzie Williams, and Tyler Stahl, the other co-chairs of the mental health task force. And then there are about 18 other members of the Committee for Political Engagement, myself being the chair, and then Izzy Murphy is also an ex officio member as the SA Secretary of Community Engagement. And I welcome any questions if you have. Thanks, guys.
Any discussion on that or other points for open forum? All right, so seeing no further points of discussion or other motions or items for open forum, I'm gonna go down to updates. Are there any senator updates that were not discussed during open forum or that are not listed here, which there are none listed here, that you would like to bring up at this time? This is a space to talk about things that you're working on if they're not related to a committee. This is things that maybe you want to discuss, but you want to not do it during open forum, something like that. Otherwise, we can move on to committees. Seeing none. Academics, I'll just put this here. We don't have an academics chair, but I wanted to let people know per call from the BIC that you are able to put a preferred name in your student now, and that'll show up on Blackboard for professors. So that's a cool new feature that IT has added in that regard. ARC, any items that are not on here?
No.
All right, any discussion for ARC? Seeing none, we can move on to SAC. Anything not on here?
Nope.
All right, any discussion? There's a question about making the link publicly shareable for the names and the name change. We can definitely do that. And we can talk with Call about how they've been sort of promoting that or where that is located on the site otherwise, other than that link that I provided. So campus services, any updates that aren't on here?
No specific updates at this point. If anybody has questions, feel free to direct them my way.
Any discussion for campus services? All right, ISAC, anything not on there?
Everything's pretty much here. Do you want me to go for it?
Yeah, I mean, if there's anything that you feel requires further discussion or that you wanted to specifically like call out or highlight as an important thing for senators to hear or student body, something like that, then you could go more in depth.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I just wanted to send out like a vote of thanks for specifically to Mike and Iman for this summer. It has been a very sort of tumultuous summer for international students. You know, there's been a lot of advocacy. There's been a lot of talks with the administration closely. There's been a lot of fighting with the administration and lobbying successfully. So we've been doing that. A point I just wanted to make first before these updates is that, you know, it would have been I think maybe this is a different conversation, but just like when it comes to chair transition, it was harder, I guess, for myself as ISAC chair because there was not really anybody to like ask questions about ISAC things. You know, I guess like Cups was there, but like at a very sort of like tangentially so and not really present. And so I've made it a point to like update the folder on the essay folder for every single thing that we did, every single meeting that we've had with the administration. And I think I'd like to advise every other chair to do so. But just on these updates specifically, so we sort of lobbied successfully for an ISAC a student advisory board. Just wanted to give updates on the selection process. So for those who were sort of looped in the conversation, ISAC isn't going to send out applications anymore to all international students who are interested, but what they are going to do is reach out to each of the cultural organizations on campus and ask for a representative to sit on the committee. Yeah, they're gonna ask everybody. They're gonna reach out. So if you know they haven't reached out, if you are like a chair of a group that hasn't been reached out on, please let me know, and I'll make it a point that ISO sends a message to you. I also want to talk about an update on international student graduate application assistance. I have a meeting with Ravi and the Dean of Graduate Studies. I think I may be butchering her title, but we have a meeting to sort of talk about how to support international students applying to graduate schools, and also working with the Career Center to host a job fair specifically for international students. So if anyone wants to jump in on that, I think that would be really appreciated, especially right now as we don't have well-established committees. It's really just like 3 people working on ISAC things right now. So we'd really appreciate the help. And also over the summer, we've been working to get state IDs for all international students. So the update on that is that we've talked to, the conversation is sort of ongoing with government officials, and we're sort of waiting for them. We're sort of waiting for certain government officials to come back to us about that. But the idea was very well received by ISO, and they're working on it. And there's a question. Oh, this is a private question, so I think this is it.
All right, is there any discussion for ISAC? It looks like we do have one member of the gallery if a senator wanted to.
Actually, can I just, on one issue, can I just add?
Yeah, you can keep going. I thought you were finished.
I've just been asked a private question. So the question is about flags update. The answer is no, and basically we've asked ISO about that, and ISO said it was not in their jurisdiction. And so at this point, I think there are senators who work closely about this, who wrote a testimonial, so can speak better about this. But from the ISO front, what we got was that this was not in their jurisdiction, and in my understanding, the committee that was appointed to work with the flag lounge issue was also not informed when the flags were sort of brought down. So as far as ISAC and ISO is concerned, the issue isn't we aren't made aware of the issue. But I do have to say that I talk regularly with Ravi Shankar, who's the director of ISO, who also sits in the flag committee, and there has been talks, and I'll actually be meeting with him tomorrow. So hopefully on the next Senate meeting, I'll have more solid updates on that front. Can I yield to Leah?
Sure.
All right, hi everyone. So I can talk a little bit about the flags. So in response to the flags being taken down without really any notice and any preparation, so some senators did write a letter to Provost Clark and President Mangelsdorf. I hope they don't see this recording. With some of our testimonies and how we felt about it. I think it was about 11 testimonies or something like that. We sent that to them, got a response later back from them that the Flag Lounge Committee will hopefully consider those testimonials in their decision making. We did also collect testimonials from the student body at large. I was able to send a list of over 50 of them to Dean Runner, who hopefully conveyed that on to Provost Clark and President Mangelsdorf, and that has also been shared with the university archives so that will actually go down in history. But a lot of them talked about how significant the Flag Lounge is for international students, since we are a school that is very global, has a lot of international students. So I'm still waiting to hear back on that, and hopefully we will. I yield back to Sakilo.
Just to add one more thing, also something, so Leigh and I had a meeting with Vice Provost Jane Gatewood yesterday about international, I think would have been yesterday or 2 days ago, I don't really remember. The point is we had a meeting, and we were basically, we wanted to express our dissatisfaction at the school. Hope, everybody knows how the school kind of brought up this like mandatory quarantine out of the blue, that they said like guidelines had changed. Our three objectives into the meeting was that, there's been a pervasive sort of patronizing attitude from the administrators towards international students, that we tend to be dealt as international students, and that we also wanted the school to apologize about that issue and just not providing sufficient guidelines. It was a very tough meeting, but in the end, we did get, and like ISO agreed to send a message to apologize to every international student for this sort of abrupt announcement that they made and just lack of consideration to international students. And so that's the latest thing. So, for everybody else who's not on the international students group, I guess that's the update. I yield my time to the gallery.
Can I ask that we go to Senator Tulloch, and then if Senator Tulloch wants to yield to any members of the gallery?
Sure, I yield to Senator Tulloch.
Yeah, I was just specifically yielding to, so Secretary Nadal.
Hi, yeah, I just had one question, because you mentioned that you were going to change the process for the advisory board selection. So if I'm getting this right, you're going to reach out to student like cultural groups, but not reach out to every international student. So wouldn't that like exclude some people, since not everybody has a group that represents them?
Yeah, that's a good question. So how this sort of worked was that we lobbied for an international, we lobbied that ISO has create an advisory board, but we didn't have much say in how that was going to happen. So I know I mentioned the student groups, but also I know that they're also going to have like an essay representative. I know that they're going to have representative from the graduate grad schools and other schools. And maybe if we want to have a conversation about selection process, that we can. But like I said, we don't have that much say in terms of who gets selected. They said that they agreed to the idea, but they sort of came back to us and said, this is how we're going to do it. And I guess to them it was easier. But like I said, I'm meeting with ISO director tomorrow, and I can definitely bring this up and then cycle back with you on the next meeting.
Senator Tulloch?
I yield to Lily.
Hey, so I just wanted to point out that last year, executive had a meeting with various people across the university regarding the flags. And there were opinions on the sense that it was going to be taken down, but that was really just one, maybe two people. So I'm glad that there are senators working towards this, because it's disappointing to see that they just automatically went to removing them. When we recommended numerous town halls, a lot of student feedback, it's a big major part of our university. So I definitely love to be kept in the loop for this, because it's sort of upsetting to see that it just was through COVID lost in translation. And I feel like many students had the testimonials. I'm really glad to hear that. But I know that they should have received more feedback, and I'm disappointed with the way the university handled it. So that's something I'm glad and just wanted to provide feedback on.
Senator Tulloch, do you have any last thoughts? Otherwise, I know one of the updates under exec is also related to flags, I believe. So we likely would be able to have a further discussion at that point.
I yield.
Any other discussion for Isaac?
No.
Okay, so we can go to presidential updates. there are quite a few, so I'll try to scroll through as you talk about them.
Okay.
President Korka, Vice President.
I'll try to be brief. So there's no particular order to how we like listed this out. Some of the points on the bottom are like more overlap between like legislative and executive. So I think I like explained some of the points pretty well, but let me just go through it. So first point, we've been looped in on a conversation about this initiative where it's like the Public Health Advisors Program. Essentially, it's something that UHS is spearheading with a number of like students, grad and undergrad. Committee is pretty small. I think it's around like 4 or 5 people, but we're going to be meeting with them on application process and how best to get this out to students. So if you're interested, do apply. Essentially what a public health ambassador is going to be is kind of like a student representative to make sure people are following guidance. You're going to have, you know, supplies on you that you can offer to students that might not have a mask on or that need hand sanitizer, kind of just being an advocate for UHS, like an extension of what they're trying to do in light of COVID. Next point. So I've been looped into conversations over the summer on essentially a government coalition between New York State universities with presidents of governments. So essentially within that group, we discuss a lot of overarching issues that affect the entire like state. And although we're going through growing pains right now, but I can see it accelerating in the future. We're having more meetings to try to see where do we go from here in the academic year. Some of the topics that we discussed are listed above. Yeah, so that's pretty much that. If anybody's curious or wants to, I guess, know more about the format of this coalition, please do reach out. It's really fascinating because I think it's like the first that we've ever tried to unionize like this. So shout out to Cornell for helping organize it. Next point. So something from our subcommittee meetings with Kurt, which for anybody that's not aware, it was like a group that was formed to help centralize student feedback a little bit more to the Kurt committee. There was representatives from all the student governments on different campuses appointed to stand present and voice, you know, concerns that they had with reopening plans. There's some stuff that might have fallen through the cracks. So essentially we've been collecting feedback from students. It's been really productive. We've already addressed some of the academic related concerns and forwarded them along to Dean Hall, which he's reminded professors and has like reached out to his team in particular to try to see what can be improved about the Zoom format. If you're curious what the Zoom format looked like for some of these classes, feel free to check out some of the PR that we posted to try to like, you know, articulate the kind of the frustration that students are facing regarding how these Zoom classes are being led. Next point is something that we have been reached out to by a nonprofit. It's essentially a mental health initiative where this group, national group, is trying to express mental health through the arts and also kind of like a panelist discussion. So essentially like the format, it's really changed since COVID because now they can hit more universities in a virtual type of setting. Also, if you're curious about some particular, Mark added some links on the agenda. Essentially, it's, you know, having spoken word bouts, it's having artistic sort of like expression galleries, having speakers that you can attend and have group conversations with folks from a different university, really connecting with people that don't know you and really speaking without much consequence, because there is the issue with UCC, like sure, understaffing, etc. They try to get around that with like group therapy, but you know, I feel like at U of R, there's like 3 degrees of separation from students. It's not always the most comfortable setting. So we're potentially, you know, going to be trying to pursue this, and we're going to have communications with other people within UHS, UCC, peer health advocates, etc., to see if anybody would be interested. Will this be a presidential initiative? I don't know. We'll see. Next point, your commitment. So something that we helped, leadership helped in particular over the summer, was discussing your commitment, how best to advertise it, sort of giving our feedback as leadership to higher admin. So we worked a lot with ODOS, and something that, you know, we're trying to do more is how do we incentivize students to follow the UR commitment, because it's not necessarily the most binding document. So part of the discussions was a PR initiative, one of which is hopefully going to come out soon. It's like a video initiative essentially. So I gave a speech for convocation for the class of 2024. It was very focused towards like the aspect of community, really emphasizing on the nostalgia. So I'm hoping to publish that speech with a compilation of videos and photos to really show the class of 2024 what the URR community is really about, because it's really hard, you know, this semester to sort of visualize that, especially if you're new to the campus. So trying to like give a glimmer of hope to, you know, what they will experience under more normal circumstances in the future. So if you want to contribute to that project, please do submit your videos and photos to that link. Moving forward, Hearst Flag Lounge. I don't know why Hearst Lounge flags. Okay, I should reform that. But anyways, so kind of just to go off of the sentiments of, you know, what was discussed in the ISAC section, we actually as leadership had meetings with ODOS and some of our advisors today to sort of discuss the flags in particular. And it seems like as for the university-wide committee, plans for them to convene haven't officially begun, but things that we're going to do in the meantime is appoint the student liaisons for the university-wide committee, but also like the subcommittee that had never formed last semester. We're going to try to take those applications that were submitted in the spring as well as this semester to form that committee as like a sort of advisory board to that main university committee for AS&E specific student feedback. So, but yeah, the testimonials got forwarded to higher admin, as like Leah had mentioned, and they really made an impact. So I'm pretty optimistic that this process is going to speed up a little bit from what would have been the case if SA hadn't touched this at all. So optimistic. Conduct Town Hall, that happened last week. So there's no university webpage that had anything published essentially. So it fell on SA a bit to advertise the conduct processes for this fall. I don't know if Connor wants to speak about this either, but we're essentially trying to think of what better ways we can also advertise sort of the consequences to things. I'm sure, you know, folks on this call are aware of sort of the mechanisms in place, like the COVID care report form that's also available on the care referral main page. You know, that's been utilized heavily, but also it's like, how do we sort of communicate with the student body what really the protocol is? So if anybody has any ideas on that, you know, like feel free to reach out to me at another time. But yeah, the town hall was pretty successful. We had around 300 folks on the call at any given like moment. It was good. This is where it's a little bit more jurisdiction between legislative and executive. So I'm just going to leave this here unless anybody wants to speak upon this a bit more from the senators, or if Mark wants to add. Is there anybody that wants to discuss this a little bit? Otherwise, I can.
It looks like Senator Tome.
Okay, Tome. Leah, would you like to?
Oh, I actually just had a question about the conduct town hall, but we can circle
Sure.
back to that later after you wrap up the executive session.
Yeah, we're almost done, I swear. Okay.
I'm also going to recommend that if it's something that is written on there, that we try and talk about the things that are not written on there or that like require further expansion, just again, in the interest of time, because we do have some people who are waiting to get confirmed.
Perfect, yeah. But yeah, so at least these initiatives, Black Lives Matter petition points, DPS, which kind of is like in conjunction to Black Lives Matter. Those in particular are like between like jurisdictions a little bit, you know, executive and legislative right now. So if anybody wants to follow up on that, feel free to like reach out to either me or anybody listed on the agenda. Yeah, these are all essentially work in progress. I think out of that particular section, the one that is close to getting finalized and put out there is the DPS survey, which is pretty great. I would check it out. It's really comprehensive. We got approval from Chief Fisher and Dana Perry. Whoops, my keyboard just popped out. But yeah, pretty productive. Title IX conversations, just to kind of give an overview a little bit. We've been reevaluating some of the federal Title IX policies because I don't know if folks, everybody on this call is aware. Betsy DeVos with the Department of Education changed the federal Title IX policies for this year. The implementation was for August 14th. So I'd reached out this in the senator group chat, you know, seeing who wanted to get involved. So we gave some feedback on that. They also said that if there's any other follow-up points that they're willing to discuss it and meet. So that's pretty optimistic. And then now we've also been given the opportunity to reevaluate the student sexual misconduct policy and policy 106. I don't know how many folks on the call are aware. They're changing how they're evaluating Title IX policies now. It's going to be kind of streamlined under the Office of Equity Inclusion, which we've also is an office that me and Mark and some members of SA regularly have been meeting with. So it's pretty great to see that they're like reevaluating the process. So optimistic. And on that note, hopefully we're going to have a badass bystander training with SA. That's something that I was talking about with Tiffany Street over the summer some more. So something I want to like kind of normalize is having departments come to, you know, Senate regularly, or like a optional sort of basis where folks can kind of get to know department, give suggestions, but also like learn some more. So whether or not we also incorporate safe zone training, like we'll see, that's further down the line. Also, it's a little rough because everything needs to be virtual now, and not everybody has made the proper accommodations. And then the last point is we've been starting to get reached out to by different departments for representation on longstanding committees that SA has always had a seat on. So while we have some names in mind, if anybody is in particular interested about getting more involved outside of a, you know, like an SA legislative committee capacity, let us know. The departments that have reached out thus far is FSA, the libraries, conduct, and I think there was one more, but I'm blanking. So, but either way, like if you're interested, want to have a discussion about this, feel free to reach out. We'll be making those appointments soon as they come. We've been slowly getting those emails as the academic year starts, so it's been chaotic, but that's it from my end.
All right, Senator Tome.
Yeah, so I had a question about the conduct thing. I do know, and I know that's something that I personally reached out to because I believe clarifying conduct policies is really important, but I'm not sure whether they are clear enough to people that haven't attended, because I don't think people who haven't attended and want to watch a 1-hour meeting want to really read the transcript that was really long and confusing to read because it wasn't in complete sentences, but it was divided by seconds. So you would have to jump every second someone else said something to another line. And then the post on our Instagram didn't answer the question. It just pointed out to when those questions will be answered, further inconveniencing students to have to go to the YouTube video. So I do know that probably it has been left vague because conduct is a really vague topic, but I'm just wondering whether there's another way we can clarify those conduct policies so that they're clear to students about what they can do and what they shouldn't do. For example, in an email to the student body clarifying what goes against COVID-19 policies, and another Instagram post that actually lists the answers to the questions listed. I'm just wondering whether that would be possible. I yield the floor.
President Gorka, any questions that are sort of directed your way, you can just answer. You're also muted.
Sorry. Connor's next on the gallery, so I don't know if he had any points on this, but I'll say, yeah, I definitely think that there needs to be more of a breakdown. I was kind of optimistic that conduct was gonna publish this somewhere or in some sort of format. Like there was talks of an FAQ, but then when we were given the box, like it was just really bare minimum. So as for making maybe like something PR related to sort of like flush it out a little bit more, that's potentially something I can discuss with Carrie Marr to see what we can do. But I'll yield because I don't know if Connor wants to speak on this either, so.
Could we have a senator be the one to yield? It's kind of a weird system that we're doing right now with the yielding, but Senator Liang.
I'm sure I'll yield to Connor if he has anything.
Sure, I'll be really quick. Firstly, thank you everyone who pushed communications out about the town hall and really helped push it to get to students and reach a broad audience. I really appreciate that. So thanks, Justina. Thanks, Tessa. Thanks everyone who was involved with that. The second one was in response to, I think, what Leah's points. So over the summer, I've been sitting on the conduct subcommittee under Kurt as one of the student representatives. Just as a result of me just being involved pretty closely in the conduct process from year to year, and just the way ACJC interlocks with them. I think we pushed for really concrete communications, but you know, that critique I think is spot on, and I wholeheartedly agree with it. So if you have specific things that you think need to be answered and like condensed down into like for example, like a 8x11 sheet of paper we can post places, like let me know and I will get that to Kyle and then I'll get it done. I yield.
Cool. So I actually have a couple of things just to expand a little bit more on the survey. So I guess like the story of the survey is when I made the survey at first, it was rather very aggressive. trying to sort of like identify and pinpoint exactly where students' distrust of DPS begins, but more importantly, sort of identifying and trying to like mine data where we can go to DPS and be like, hey, this is a really, really big problem. Here's the data that shows for it. Obviously, over the course of the iterations of the survey, it became less aggressive over time. But I think one of the really important parts that's in that survey is a part where you get to explain sort of your interactions with DPS. This is incredibly important. So although the survey looks really tame, we're really looking to have students actually speak about both their negative experiences and their good experiences, I guess, but mostly their negative experience in great detail. And these surveys don't go to DPS at all. They go to, well, they go to us, right? And then from there, we sort of identify advocacy. In terms of that advocacy, I want to make it very clear that we're not, we're working with DPS in the sense that we would like them to be better. But at the end of the day, public safety is a public safety organization, and we are student government, and we represent the interests of students, in particular students of color, queer students, who are disproportionately sort of like have negative experiences with policing in general. So that's just something to point out. If anyone wants to reach out, I guess like to like find out more sort of what the behind the scenes stuff or like how those discussions are panning out, it would be really great to sort of, yeah, if you want to reach out. I guess the second thing that's a little bit more in the works is a question about the Public Safety Review Board. So if you don't know this already, the Public Safety Review Board is the body that sort of sits on top of DPS and approves various policy changes, including the arming of DPS circa 2 years ago, and then circa like even before that. So these are sort of the discussions that are happening. We're looking at sort of like, we're talking to a lot of faculty members who are abolitionists, and also a lot of members of administration to sort of figure out what is the reimagined version of the Public Safety Review Board and how can that actually be a body that holds public safety accountable. Yeah, so that's basically it. I yield back to the floor.
All right, Senator Tulloch.
I'll yield to Tayfun.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out one thing. In the executive updates, it said at the bottom that Justine and Mark are appointing representatives to standing university committees. And I just wanted to point out that the bylaws state that the president and vice president have to have Senate approval for those nominees. So just you can ask as well those nominees questions, and I want to make sure that senators are fully aware of their rights in this case, that they have the right to question any representatives that are being sent to these university committees. That's it. I yield.
Senator Tulloch?
I yield.
Okay, just as a point of clarification for the future, some of these items may appear in other sections of the agenda as we move along, as they might fall under a particular committee or the work of advocacy of a particular senator or something like that. So right now over the summer, because we haven't had committees officially meeting, some of these things have been informal discussions or meetings that have happened that have been outside of the traditional process. So that's just a point for anyone that's looking later on. They may be in a different section. So moving on to alumni and advancement, anything other than what's written here?
Nope, nothing extra.
Any discussion for alumni and advancement? What about community engagement? Anything extra?
No, I just wanted to say that if any senators have any projects or ideas or anything that they want to work on in terms of community engagement or getting students involved in the Rochester community, you can reach out. I put my email there. And just I'm working on, as a kind of unofficial member of CPE, just a lot of voter registration stuff. So yeah, the updates are all right there. Reach out if you're interested or if you have any ideas. Thanks, guys.
Is there any discussion for community engagement? There's a member of the gallery who's on the list.
Wait, Alexander, real quick. Can I say one
Yeah.
more thing?
Go ahead.
Okay, can I yield to Ian?
Uh,
Or do you need a
well,
senator to do that? Because
yeah, I was going to have Senator Rogers
okay, yeah.
give the
never mind.
floor. Yeah.
I yield to Ian.
Thank you. I just wanted to share some other really exciting updates from CPE. And the reason I'm doing this is because I'm sure all of you know CPE is not a student organization. We're actually like a committee of the university. So I feel like it's very pertinent to make sure you guys are all staying informed about what's going on. So a couple of the things that have been in the works over the summer that I'm really proud to say have now been fully implemented. The president's office, so President Mangelsdorf, approved funding for the university to enter into a partnership with TurboVote. And for those who are not familiar, TurboVote's like one of the most prominent voter registration dashboards / tools that universities or colleges can use. And so we are now in that partnership with them. And so if any of you have kind of been to CPE events before, we usually use vote.org, but we're now going to be using TurboVote from now on, which is really great because we can actually personalize that platform for students to kind of be able to, if, for example, you're registered to vote in Riverview versus if you're registered to vote on River Campus, there's going to be a difference in your polling site. So they're going to be able to kind of tailor that to students. So you can check it out via that link that I just dropped in the chat. We're still in the process of going over the language on that dashboard, but that's a really, really exciting development that's been in the works for a few years now, actually. So that's really great. The other thing that just happened last week that we've been working on for a few months now over the summer is getting language on Blackboard for students to register to vote. So if you go on the main page of Blackboard, there is now a section called U R Votes. And so that's the whole section dedicated for U of R students, telling them how to register to vote, request absentee ballots, get election updates, things like that. So we're really, really excited for that to happen. This is something that we've been working really hard on with University IT and the communications office. So that actually just went live last week. On behalf of the university, I applied for a grant through a national nonprofit organization for registering voters, things like that. I actually just got a few hours ago confirmation that we received the maximum award of $500 for the university to kind of use towards registering voters and absentee ballot request initiatives. And one of the things that I wanted to update you guys on that's going to be rolled out like formally, we've already done kind of a soft launch, but more of a hard launch in the next week or two, is going to be an absentee ballot initiative through Common Connection and Wilson Commons, where you can actually bring your absentee ballot request envelope or the absentee ballot itself, and the university will pay for postage to be able to send those in to wherever the Board of Elections is that you need to send that. And in addition, we have purchased, using the funds that we were able to get, a kind of a collection box to be put in Common Connection. And we've been really, really grateful to all of the staff at Wilson Commons Student Activities for kind of partnering with us on this. And I will just end with saying I'm really, really excited to work with SA on all of these initiatives and more throughout the coming months.
Senator Tolik, I believe you have the floor.
I yield.
All right, is there any other discussion for community engagement? There's also a reminder for senators to reach out if they're interested in working on any of those projects or things related to community engagement. So that goes for pretty much all of the updates on the agenda, that if you have something related to it and you want to find out more about it or ask questions, please reach out to the person who's in charge. PR? Karamar? Anything else?
I just wanted to say that that's the link. And if you're having any problems accessing it, please let me know. It might be that you're not a member. I believe I got all the members into the CCC, but just in case. That's it.
Any discussion for PR, Karamar? Seeing none, we can move on to ACJC. Anything that you'd like to discuss further than what's here?
I just want to get started on the right foot with Senate. As a heads up, I will update when things aren't confidential. We're involved in a lot of processes that are. So that's sort of where I'm coming from when I give my updates. So I don't have any public updates, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to ask. I'm happy to answer them and talk about them. But I do want to say, please, please, please read the COVID commitment and tell your friends about it, because we just need to get that out to people so that way they know sort of what the rules that are governing them. I yield.
Any discussion for ACJC? Seeing none, we'll move on to parliamentarian. Typhoon.
All right, so I selected a deputy parliamentarian nominee, which is on one of the motions tonight, according to a process which I laid out with as much detail as I could while remaining confidentiality. So I'd encourage you when the motion comes up to click on the document to see my process. In terms of potential violations, this is something I'm going to be wanted to do, just so that on the record there is a list of potential violations and I can try to enforce them. So we are missing quite a bit of committee documentation from prior years. I do not have the capacity to find all of that documentation, but for the students who haven't graduated and were prior chairs or deputy chairs, I will continue to hunt them down. And we'll name names starting next week. All right. In terms of newer or current violations, I think that steering has already made it clear to not bring up one of them, but it's up to senators if they want to ask me about it. I think that I'm not planning on taking action on either of them. Next, I did create a draft of a new style guide, so please feel free to read it and provide feedback. For returning senators, especially since you are aware of the style guide, but for even new senators, it should also make sense to you as well. And I'm going to propose it to Senate in the next week or two, and then you'll still have to approve it by simple majority. So you will have that opportunity. That's it though.
Any questions or discussion for the parliamentarian? Seeing none, we will move on to speaker and deputy speaker updates. Matt, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yes. First off, I just wanted to say big hello to everybody. A lot of you might know my voice and my face, but not really know who I am as a person. So I'm looking forward to meeting all of you. I've met a couple of you and working with all of you in this year going forward. Just a quick little thing I wanted to bring up. Me and Alexander were talking about this a little earlier. I just wanted to ask everyone if you had something to add to the steering agenda, to please add it before the meeting and to not update the Senate agenda as much as possible. It just makes my life a lot easier. And I know that this week was a little different and not all of the committees had, exactly what they wanted to say exactly down, but please in the future, when you come to the steering meetings, please have most of your updates done and please avoid updating the Senate agenda before the meetings as much as possible. Looking forward to a great year, guys.
All right, for my updates, I echo Connor's sentiment about the COVID commitment. I am just putting this here so that I can remind all the senators in particular to please keep track and let your constituents know about where they can find information about how many university community members have COVID. That's updated very frequently. It's multiple times a day that they check it. So please use that. It's on the main Rochester site, and there is actually a threshold for numbers. So please, do not go out and party. That's like a huge thing. In terms of Senate meetings, speakers list, this is a sneak peek of what 2 weeks from now the Senate meeting could look like for a speakers list. Because we're on Zoom, it's extremely hard for me to keep track of everyone, and it's usually not fair because I can only see so many people on the screen at a certain time. So there'll be a way for people to add themselves to the speakers list when they want to talk. And that'll make it really easy because it'll automatically queue everyone in the system. And it'll keep track of attendance as well, which is going to be awesome. The minutes and senator motions to be on committees, that's all going to come later in the meeting that comes after the fall elections. We've revitalized our SA YouTube, so please, if you're looking for Senate meetings, go there. In the meantime, while we're getting the minutes squared away. And as a notification to everyone, Leah has resigned as the chair of the Student Life Committee, but she will continue being a senator. So with that, is there any discussion for either me or Matt? I do see there's one member of the gallery. Senator Tome.
Hi, so I actually do have a question about the SA YouTube recordings, but if anyone does have any question about my resignation or anything else, please feel free to ask either now or to actually message me or whatever. I'm also happy to talk a little bit more about what the role entails in case you are interested in applying. It's a really great role. I would really recommend doing it if you really care about student life. But the question I actually had is, will you still be posting the SA YouTube links to the videos on Facebook? Because I believe Facebook is really accessible to students, and I don't think students will actively go out of their way to watch YouTube videos or find the SA YouTube. Rather, I think if they've liked the SA government Facebook page, they're doing that to stay updated. So I'm just a little bit concerned about how we can still make this accessible to all students in a sense where they can easily stay informed about what's happening. I yield.
Yep, we can look into porting this somehow to the Zoom meetings to Facebook. They still do have to be a Zoom meeting or a similar nature, and the recordings still have to stay on YouTube. But it's possible we can do something also on Facebook. Part of the reason it was moved, just as context, is because Facebook does not allow you to search or sort between years for the most part. There is technically a way, but it's extremely convoluted and complicated. So the way that we've organized it now, you would not be able to go back and find the Senate meeting that you're looking for with it unless it was within the past couple Senate meetings. So that's something that has been really confusing for people to look back and try and find information. So typically this way, we figured it would be better to house it all under the YouTube playlist. But if it's something where many people use Facebook, I can make sure that we talk with Karen Marr about putting it on the Facebook as well. Any other points of discussion, Senator? Or do you yield, Senator Tome?
Yes, I do yield.
Senator Baker?
I yield to Izzy.
Hi, I just had a quick it's not related, it's from Matt actually. It was from when you were saying about the agenda. If like this is a really stupid question. If I'm like putting my community secretary for community engagement updates, should I put them on should I put them on before the do you mind if I put them on after the steering meeting, or was that specifically for committee updates?
Just try to have everything on before the steering committee. I understand if you need to do it before the Senate meeting, but just please try to have everything ready before the steering meeting.
Okay, thank you. That clears everything up. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Senator Baker, you still have the floor if you
I yield.
Anything else before we move into new business? All right, so we're going to now move into new business, which means senators will be able to make any motion that they like. These motions are here on the agenda based on the motions that were passed at steering. You're welcome to make any motion at any time. So with that being said, is there a motion? Senator Tome?
Motion to approve Boris Sorokin as deputy parliamentarian.
Is there a second on that motion? Senator, this is where it's hard to use Zoom. Senator Rogers? Is there any discussion? Karen Marr, do you want to talk a little bit?
Sorry, I was muted. We're on, okay. Yeah, so basically, sorry. I think it would be great to have a deputy
My apologies. I must have misheard you. Sorry, I thought you were, okay. So you motioned for Boris? Okay, so then moving to Typhoon then. My apologies.
All right, thank you. Just one other note is that I think that for the numbered motions, that they should be numbered based off of the last agenda that we had. So it might be at like motion 20 by now, based off of other motions we've had. So I just wanted to talk through the process. So you can find that document in my parliamentarian updates, but just to give an overview of it, I reached out to all the candidates who applied for parliamentarian, and I had done 90-minute interviews with them. I asked them an array of questions about, aimed at, critical thinking, their rules experience, everything like that. And unfortunately, even with all of that and the scoring, 2 candidates tied. So as a tiebreaker, I met with Alexander and Justina and got more feedback, and I was able to come to Boris. And Boris and I have met consistently over the summer, and I went through my calendar and added up all the hours from our meetings. We have had over 40 hours of meetings in terms of just reviewing our governing documents and making sure that the Elections Rules Task Force is ready to go. And I'm extremely impressed with his professionalism, and I know that he would do great as deputy parliamentarian.
Is there any discussion? Boris, do you want to give a little introduction of some kind?
Yes. So yeah, thank you. I want to thank parliamentarian Sahin for introducing me. So as it was already said, my name is Boris Sorokin. I am nominated by parliamentarian Sahin as deputy parliamentarian for the position of deputy parliamentarian. I am currently sophomore, student of class of 2023. So a few words about my background. I assume that will be helpful. So in my past of working as member of the student association government at my high school, I was holding different positions that included position which would be, I would say, equal to position of senator in our university, as well as a position which is analogous to the position of Speaker of the Senate in our SA government at University of Rochester. So I was holding those positions while my high school career. Also, I was working a lot on establishing some sort of guidelines for parliamentary procedure at my high school SA government because we were lacking them. That was a part of my experience, in my opinion. Yes, this is my first year at SA government of this college of University of Rochester, and I'm very excited about it. As for my current position, other positions then, besides my nomination as deputy parliamentarian, those are, I'm on executive boards of 2 clubs. I'm social chair of tennis club and vice president of Eastern European Students Association. Yeah, so that's pretty much. So I think I covered my past experience and what I'm currently doing as part of my extracurricular activities at University of Rochester. Yes, that's all. I yield the floor.
Okay, is there any discussion on this motion? Any questions senators like to ask? Any discussion to be had? Senator Tome?
Yeah, it's great to see you being motion to be approved tonight. Could you maybe expand a little bit about why you want to do this, what other qualifications you have, what you're really excited about in your new role as deputy parliamentarian maybe?
Yeah, so firstly, I should say that I like doing things that I feel professional doing, and I assume that I am a little bit, I have some skills of working with parliamentary procedure. I'm familiar with our parliamentary procedure. We have at this college, which is Robert's Rules of Order newly revised, edition 11. It's hard to explain your passions towards different things, but I was enjoying it while at my high school. I was even enjoying it to some extent while I was at my middle school because I was reading different contracts. And I think that working with the documents, working with the, with the bureaucracy inevitably in all these cases, that's the thing that I like and I've been doing for a long time. So I know it's just sometimes hard to explain your passion towards the thing that that you like doing for many years. But I still hope I was able to answer this question. Yeah, I yield the floor.
You still have the floor, Senator Tom.
Oh, so sorry. I yield.
Any other discussion, questions? Seeing none, we will do this vote by roll call when the deputy speaker is ready.
Sure. Senator Art Arkin? Yes. Senator Baker?
Yeah.
Senator Billa?
Yep.
Senator Hawk? I guess just chat. Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Senator Cosme? Senator Cosme? Senator Leong?
Sorry, I said yes, but I think my mic was just not working well. I said yes.
Okay. Senator Leong?
Yes.
Senator Liverpool?
Yes.
Senator Shangasa?
Yes.
Senator Ramirez?
Yes.
Senator Rogers?
Yes.
Senator Salimi?
Yes.
Senator Tome?
Aye.
Oh. Senator Tulloch?
Yes.
13 yeses and 1 absence.
All right, congratulations. You are now the deputy parliamentarian. Is there a motion? There does have to be a motion at some point, even if it's a motion to adjourn. So, Senator Tulloch.
Motion to approve Grace DeLeo as deputy to the Secretary of Public Relations.
Is there a second on that motion? Senator Hawk? All right, now we can go to Karamar. My apologies for the mix-up.
You're good. Yeah, so I just wanted to state that I think it's good to have a deputy, especially right now, because most of COVID has changed all of our lives and many things are now virtual. So I think it's a really good help. And she is someone who actually had applied for the position before. She had mentioned this to me, and I thought she would be a great addition to the team. And I've worked with her in the past, and I know she works very well. So, yeah.
Is there any discussion on this motion? Senator Tome?
Yes, I actually do have one question. So typically, I haven't really experienced in about now the 3rd year I'm in SA government, ever been there being a deputy appointed to a secretary. So I'm just wondering why exactly that is happening now for such a position. I yield back.
Cameron?
Okay. Yeah. I just really think that it's something that will come in very handy. I feel like this year there's more work to be done. Just again because of like COVID times and everything being more virtual. There's a lot to do. That can't happen in person. And I thought the addition would be good. As to past history with deputies, that's I mean, my understanding is that it is a decision that the secretary has, and if I thought it was a good idea, I don't expect everybody to pass to be saying it. I think for me is the best idea.
All right, Senator Tome.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Can I actually yield to Parliamentarian Sahin then?
All right, I'll remember to mute this time. Sorry. I had 2 points. I remember from last year that the Secretary of PR was quite overworked, so perhaps having an assistant secretary is a good thing. I remember that at least in the Campus Services Committee, I think a senator, in fact, designed a few like infographics because the Secretary of PR was so overworked during crunch time. And then the second thing was that I think that this motion should be a motion for like an assistant Secretary of Public Relations. Thank you, Micah, for bringing that up. And unless it was intentional, I think that if there's a motion to amend this motion to assistant secretary, I think that that would be favorable. All right, I yield.
Senator Tome?
Thank you so much for clarifying that, Typhoon. I was just curious about it because I've never really seen this happen before, but thank you, and I yield.
Senator Rogers?
So, motion to amend motion 1 should be labeled as motion to approve Grace Delio as Assistant Secretary of Public Relations.
Is there a second on that motion? Senator Liang? Is there any discussion on the motion to amend the motion to read motion to approve Grace DeLeo as Assistant Secretary, etc.? The motion that Devon made, is there any discussion specifically on the amending of the motion?
Yes, I do have something.
Is that Senator Liverpool?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I was just wondering, Typhoon, if you would be able to kind of go back into why, like the difference between the use of deputy and assistant and why it is important to change it. I yield to Typhoon if you can.
Sure. So in the bylaws, it makes the references to assistant secretaries, but not a deputy to the secretary. And this is just to make sure that we're approving someone to be in the correct position. I imagine that no one would actually file or like create an objection to ACJC, but I think it's just in our best interest to be consistent with our governing documents, and this should have been caught at steering, my fault as well, and so I apologize for that, but that's the reason why. I yield back.
Thank you. I yield to Alexander.
All right, is there any other discussion on the motion to amend? It sounds like some people are having trouble with the raise hand function. Again, hopefully that'll get fixed in the future, but if there's anybody that needs help, it's under the participants tab that you're able to raise your hand on Zoom, and then I can recognize that you want to speak. Any other discussion? All right, so seeing no further discussion on the motion to amend, we will move into a motion by unanimous consent. So is there any dissent on the motion to amend this motion to be a motion to approve Grace as a Assistant Secretary of Public Relations? Seeing and hearing no dissent, the motion is approved. So we will now go back into this new motion, which is on whether or not to approve the motion, the primary motion, which is as Grace as the Assistant Secretary. So at the end of the discussion here, it'll be a vote on whether or not to approve Grace as the Assistant. So is there any other discussion on whether or not Grace should be the Assistant Secretary? Seeing no further discussion, we can move into a vote by roll call when the Deputy Speaker is ready.
Okay, Senator Ari Narkin.
Aye.
Senator Baker.
Yes.
Senator Billa.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Senator Hawk.
Yes.
Senator Cosme.
Yes.
Senator Leong.
Yes.
Senator Liverpool.
Yes.
Senator Shangasa.
Yes.
Senator Ramirez.
Yes.
Senator Rogers.
Yes.
Senator Salimi.
Yes.
Senator Tome. Senator Tome. Senator Tulloch.
Yes.
Senator Tome.
Senator Tome, you might be muted.
She left the call.
I see that. Okay, that's an abstention.
All right, well, 12 yeses and 2 abstentions.
So that motion passes. Congratulations, Grace. All right, is there a motion? Senator Rogers.
Motion to approve the bill to fix the inconsistencies in prior bills and governing documents.
Is there a second on that motion? Senator Salimi.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? We can go to whoever was writing that bill and wants to talk about it.
I can speak on it.
Sure.
So this was something where I, over the summer with Boris, went through all of the bills for the past 2 years to ensure that they were implemented correctly, and also that according to the exact text of the bill, that they made the changes that they intended to make. And even if I catch a mistake, sometimes it's not so easy for me as someone who maintains the governing documents, it's not so easy for me to make those changes. Sometimes bills have to list the original and the new wording of any provisions they change. So if the original wording was incorrect, then what do I do? I'm not sure. And this is a bill that would help fix some of these mistakes. I think that if you scroll to the bottom as well, after you read the rationale, you can see in Appendix A, each of the mistakes that were found. What type of mistake? Was it due to the implementation by the person at the time, or was it due to how the text was phrased in the bill? And what type of error, if it was probably trivial or not trivial. And yeah, so please feel free to ask questions. this bill does need to sit on the table for 1 week because it affects provisions within the bylaws. So someone would need to motion to have this lay on the table for 1 week. I yield.
Senator Baker?
Motion to table number 3.
Is there a second on that motion? Senator Liang? Is there any discussion on the motion to table this bill? Senator Liverpool?
I was just wondering if once this bill is tabled, we would be able to continue the discussion on it. I guess that's a point of inquiry.
No. So once this motion, if this motion were to pass, this motion to table, you could have the discussion outside of Senate time, but the motion to discuss or motion about the bill and where the point where we would be discussing the bill would already have passed. So from my interpretation, you would have to vote down this motion and have discussion during the part before you would make another motion to table.
Point of inquiry. Can I motion to suspend my motion until she says what she needs to say?
We could have no further discussion on this and have a vote by unanimous consent, and you could dissent on the motion to table, and then we could bring it back. It would go back into the main discussion, and you would have discussion, and then there would be potentially another motion to table. Is that something you want to do? It does look like Typhoon is in the gallery. If a senator wanted, I don't know if you still have your hand raised or not. Okay. Senator Rogers?
I was gonna just ask if I can. I might be wrong, but actually, Victoria, how important is the discussion on this?
Sorry, I didn't catch.
Sorry, my question is, I use this the Victoria to kind of explain how important discussion on the previous, on the motion to table, how important is it? Like, should we actually do this whole thing and then vote it down to discuss, or is it important or no? I was actually, might be used to the question.
Senator Liverpool, do you want to?
Yeah, I can discuss what I wanted to say with the parliamentarian outside of Senate, but this is the first time that I'm seeing this bill, so I did want to just have a brief discussion about it. I know I can't talk about like the substantive content, but yeah, that's all. We could vote it down. I'm not worried. I yield.
So just to clarify, if you pass this motion to table, you will be able to discuss it throughout the next 2 weeks because we won't have a Senate meeting next week. And then at the meeting after that, you'll be able to have more discussion because you'll potentially be taking from the table this bill as one of the motions. So at that point, you would be able to continue having the discussion. So you're welcome to have discussion now or both. You can have discussion in 2 weeks as well. So it's up to you as senators when you want to have that discussion. Is there any other discussion before we vote on whether or not to, this is still the motion on whether or not to table. Is there any discussion on whether or not to table? Okay, so I'm going to do this by unanimous consent unless Senate would like to overrule me and vote a different way. Is there any dissent on the motion to table? Does anyone not want this to be tabled or the motion to pass? Seeing and hearing none, the motion passes. So this is now tabled until it is brought from the table again at the next Senate meeting. All right, is there a motion? Senator Rogers?
Motion to approve the bill to increase accountability in the student association government.
Is there a second on that motion? Senator Liang? Is there any discussion? I assume you seconded. Is there any other discussion on the motion on this bill? If Senator Liang or Rogers or anybody that's listed here, if you want to talk a little bit about the bill.
I guess I can speak a little bit first. So I guess like in the context of the discussion we had at the top of the meeting of like accountability sort of communications and stuff, we actually, when we were looking at this bill, we want to sort of close a lot of the loopholes that were sort of remaining in the bylaws regarding a couple of specific processes, in particular the one, so if you click the, yes, there we go. So all of the changes are actually in section 4. Article 4, section 2. It's highlighted for you in pink. So some of the wording, stuff like that.
Article 5.
Oh, sorry. Article 5, yes, vacancies, removals, and resignations. Okay, and then section 2.
Can you see okay? I'm trying to scroll down to find it, but with the screen share, it's a little slow.
Yes, can everyone see that?
Keep going, Senator Liang, if you want to.
Yeah, so a couple of like weird sort of issues. So in particular, the removal of senators, and then also the removal of basically any office holder, including executive members. So yes, so we can remove anyone. There has to be a vote, but more specific things. There was this weird provision where if we were to remove executive, the speaker who is not democratically elected by the people would then become president unless we were to hold a special election. So things are sort of weird and wonky. What we created is instead like, we must hold a special election unless there are 3 weeks left, in which case it like the seat will remain, or the seats of president and vice president will remain vacant. The Senate may also remove any office holder in SA government due to, but not limited to, a lack of confidence. So this is just more like a, like explicitly, like we think that this has been implied in the bylaws for a really long time that like, you know, you could remove anyone for any particular reason, but this sort of like specifies that we are removing someone because of a lack of confidence or a violation. So it's more specific. And then immediately following that vote, we want to have immediately a removal. This is to say that if you impeach somebody or if you remove someone, they are actually removed. Whereas previously, when you removed someone, they would be in the office still, so your removal didn't really do anything. So yeah, cool. And the second thing is, yeah, they are unable to run again for the same thing. So for example, if I'm a class senator and say I'm a senator and I get removed from my Senate seat, I am unable to run for the same seat once again during the special election. This just like makes sense, or at least intuitively it made sense to us. Yeah, so that's that section.
Just to clarify, I mean, that what Senator Yang mentioned with the removal, I think it kind of more applies to executive, since like there's a kind of a for senators, if they're removed, the next top vote getter will replace them. So this kind of applies to the other branches of government. Just to clarify.
Is there any other discussion? Let me pull up the speakers list here. It looks like Parliamentarian Sahin is in the gallery if anyone wants to yield to him. Senator Rogers.
I yield to Parliamentarian.
All right, thank you. So I had one thing that I wanted to bring up within Article 5, if you actually could just scroll down a little bit, Alexander. And yeah, and so it was, if the office holder, so I just highlighted it, you had it. It was in Article 5, Section 2.A, point E. Yeah, and so this was just one thing I wanted to bring up. I still endorse the bill. I think that it makes great changes, but I think that this part is important. Would the Senate want the office holder to be present for the deliberation or to be out of the room? I think that there are different ways of looking at it. If you want the office holder to be able to respond throughout the deliberation, then perhaps it would be better to keep them. If having that office holder there is going to add a burden or an obstacle for speaking freely, then perhaps not. And I just wanted to make sure that senators saw that section and could think about it. I yield.
Senator Rogers, you still have the floor.
Just to give more context, that provision is only for petition points, that if the petition is reached a certain number, like you see right here in clause E, it's a sub-clause or sub-clause under clause E. It's only for, and the only reason, kind of more rationale behind why we put that there is if somebody has a petition and it gets a certain number, I feel like at that point people are aware of the petition growing and the numbers accumulating, and most people will rationally will look at it. So by that time, I think there should be enough time to somebody to kind of explain themselves informally in essay communications. So that kind of the reason why we ask for them not to be present in deliberations, is you will have adequate time enough as the position may accumulate to explain oneself, and then from there, other people can speak more freely about said petition point under the stipulation of that contingency we added. I yield.
All right, is there any other discussion? This would, I believe, also have to sit on the table, so that eventually if a senator wants to make a motion to table this bill. Senator Tome?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for bringing this up. I'm not sure about this section about whether it should go into executive session or not. That is something where I feel like if there is a petition that draws enough public support from the student body to actually recall someone from their position within SA government, I do think it should be possible to publicly discuss why they're being removed too. So I feel like that is kind of contradictory, but maybe instead I think it would be great to say it may go into executive session, but it doesn't have to. So that would make a lot more sense to me personally, but that is something that I'm happy to talk about more during the week it sits on the table. But yeah, I yield. Oh wait, actually, if no one else has any points, I move to table this motion, the bill.
Quick point, Leah. I think.
Oh, okay, sure. Just go ahead. I yield to you.
Oh, sorry. It does say would you say it's to have it say May? It does say May. It isn't instructing they have to do second session. It says in May. So I think that point we made, saying they're making no force them. It doesn't force them. It just gives them a point where what they can do, but they can do whatever. It just kind of good suggestion.
That makes sense. Thank you for clarifying, Devon. Okay, so then I just motion to table the bill, the motion.
Can you say I mean, I can interpret that if you'd like, or you could say the full motion to table and then
Sorry
the full
for
bill
the
name.
confusion. I'll say it. Motion to table the motion to approve bill to increase accountability in the Students Association government.
All right, is there a second on that motion? Senator Salimi?
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion on the motion to table specifically? Senator Rogers?
This is a quick question. The table week, don't we, so to take it from, we just had a motion again to take it from the table the next Senate meeting, which is in 2 weeks, correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's it.
There is technically an option to overrule the bylaws. You can make that motion, so if it's not required to table as a note, but that's typically been the process, and you would have to overrule your governing documents to be able to make that motion. So that, just to clarify, that's you put it on the table and then you take it from the table at the next meeting. Senator, do you yield?
Yes, I do.
Senator Salimi?
Sorry, your voice cut off.
I just called on you. I yielded to you.
Oh,
Did you
sorry.
have any points to share?
No, I yield. Sorry.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on the motion to table? We're going to do this one by unanimous consent. Is there any dissent on the motion to table this motion? Seeing and hearing none, the motion has been tabled. Is there a motion? Senator Baker?
Motion to approve statement of support for Center of Education Abroad's decision.
Is there a second on that motion? Oh no, my Zoom has gone all funky. That's not good. Okay, is there a second on that motion? Senator Arnarkin? All right, is there any discussion? Senator Baker, do you want to take it away, tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so this statement is just a statement of support that we can support as the essay, so praising the Education Abroad's decision to allow students to enroll both in local universities and online courses at the University of Rochester who are currently in China and cannot come to the University of Rochester on campus like to attend classes. And just to give some context to why I decided to write this statement. So a student who is currently in China right now contacted me saying, you know, this is before the decision was made that they could enroll in both, just saying that she was worried about her being able to fulfill her graduation requirements considering the restrictions, and that she was just stressed for a lot of different reasons because she could not enroll in both universities. And she was just asking if SA could do anything about it. And then I saw the petition that CSA made, and I noticed, okay, a lot of students are having these concerns and these anxieties. And so I started, you know, writing a statement, because obviously we're not the ones who can just ta-da, make it so that people can dual enroll, but we can express the voice of, we can be a mouthpiece for students. And then eventually, before the Senate meeting came about, the center did figure out a way that students could dual enroll. And to me, if something, it means enough to students that they will petition and they will put pressure on administration, then also reach out to individuals within student government when things go wrong, then that should also be significant to have that same energy when things go well. And so I wanted to make this statement as a way of setting a precedent of being equally concerned about the positive as the negative, and to celebrate a job well done. I mean, ultimately, to be able to provide the best education for students is the center's job while they're abroad. However, I think they very effectively responded to the concerns of students, and I know that there were a lot of factors that they had to juggle in terms of making this possible. And so I don't see why we wouldn't just sort of write a statement saying, we see you and you did well.
All right, do you yield? Is there any discussion? Actually, we have a speakers list now, sorry. Senator Tome?
Yes, first of all, thank you so much, yeah, for writing this. I know you got this to me over the weekend. I apologize that I haven't been able to give you feedback until now. That was my sincere mistake. I'm really happy to see that the Center of Education Abroad has been able to figure this out, especially after hearing the concerns of students that are studying in local. However, I would feel more comfortable maybe waiting a week or so to actually hear from the students who are doing this program, whether it's actually being successful, this change in policy around that, and to then pass it. I talked to some people, there were still concerns even after that decision was made about it. So I think it would be really great to kind of include the student feedback after now they've taken classes for a week, then to pass it. And I think something that would also be really great, and I think is also on the speakers list, maybe have the chair of ISAC endorse this. And ISAC itself, I see that they're not endorsing it, and I think they've also worked on this or addressed this partially. So I do want to make sure that that is being addressed in the statement too. I yield.
Yeah, so I just want to say that, I also worked with the CSA students, and we've, ISAC has received, concerns from students. Have been able to talk a lot to ISO director about this, who, said that they were going to talk to the, I forget the exact office, but they said they were going to talk to other offices on campus just to make sure that they get to the bottom of this issue. The reason, I guess, this kind of support statements to offices on campus is that, one, I feel like I don't see why, and perhaps you can elaborate more if you want. I don't see why, and I know I brought this in steering, but I just wanted to bring it up publicly, that I don't see why we should be publicly endorsing, or just as SA endorsing organizations or just offices for doing their job. I just feel like those students had every right to come to the administration and to say, hey, we have concerns, please listen to us, hear us, and any response to that I wouldn't necessarily deem as exceptional or anything that's worthy of praise, and maybe worthy of praise, yes, but certainly not something that SA needs to vote on. And I just wanted to ask you directly, that is it you're thinking that this should be sort of the precedent for most offices on campus that do something, any exceptional thing? Is it you're thinking that this should be something that SA should be doing, and if so, why? I guess I yield.
Yeah, so I'm happy to respond to actually both of your comments, and I appreciate you bringing them up. So with respect to what Leah was saying, I just want to sort of clarify what the purpose of this statement is, which is to praise the decision and also the efforts that were made so that this could be possible, right? This isn't necessarily a statement that says, wow, we really like how this was done. No, we're essentially expressing two things. We're saying, and this kind of goes to your point, one, if something means enough to be outraged about it, it should mean enough to be happy about it, right? And two, a value that we have of SA of responding to student feedback. Now, I think this might seem a bit out of the ordinary because it is not the president, and it's not something that this just isn't the type of subject that statements that come for us to vote on tend to be. And so I see how it can be a bit, seems like it's an other, right? But I don't think that merits it, that takes away its merit just because it's different. Does that make sense? And so I really would like to sort of focus on the purpose of the statement and not sort of other things that are happening around the topic that the statement is about, and also, you know, comparing it. I think we should just say, okay, this is a statement. Do we support sort of what it says? Also, in terms of ISAC, that's a great point, and I did consider it. Committees aren't, I know that committees aren't full yet. Like I myself am not even on one at the moment. And so because this is the first Senate meeting of the year, I sort of, you know, pass that instead of reaching out in that way. I reached out to the club organizations that already had, you know, their full e-boards and things like that. That would, well, I mean, maybe not full, the freshman reps haven't been elected, but you know, that were a bit more stable, that I felt really believed in the issue. And so I definitely consulted with members of the student body and members of our community to make sure that, you know, I was writing in a way that had integrity to a lot of people.
Just to comment on that, I respect I respect that you wrote the statement, and I'm interested to know or hear what everybody thinks about it. But I just want to say that, you know, as ISAC this summer, we've been working on really a lot of things, and we've had, you know, a lot of outrage that students had, and we've had cases where, you know, like I mentioned earlier, where we've called out administration to be like, hey, you know, we're not expecting any less of what you expect from us as students, and we think that your actions aren't consistent to the values that you put out there for yourself, like, you know, the Melior values. And they've been able, and we've gotten responses from that. And you know, the most recent example is when we called out ISO to apologize to the international students, you know, for their actions, and their response was, yeah, but only a fraction of the students were affected. But we were like, okay, we get that, but you know, anything that happens to, even if it's just one international students, they're going to share it with us, and we're going to share their concerns. And you know, the point is we brought them out, and they were able to do that. And even the whole summer, when we've had cases where, you know, we've hosted town halls, we've called Molly Jolliffe, and we were like, can we have your can we have your time? We called, you know, Ravi Shankar. We said, can we have your time? We know you're busy, but students have questions, and they were able to sit down, and we were able to ask them questions. Even the financial aid officer, Lucinda Snyder, we're like, hey, can you guys sit down with us? Can you talk to us? We have concerns. We know you're busy. They were able to do that. And the most we're able to do really is just to send out thank you notes for their time. And I just don't think that, I think that a lot exceptional things have happened, but I just don't think that you know, like writing whole statements is really like things that we should be doing as Senate. I think that there's more important things that we should be focusing on the front of representing students and making sure that students get what they want. And this just seems like pandering to the administration. But I just, you know, I'm interested to hear what everybody else says.
I think we can exhaust the speaker list, and then I can respond after everyone speaks. Or maybe I should just get on the speaker list, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to recommend for like parliamentary procedure, and because to make sure everybody gets a chance to say, that we move to Senator Rogers.
I get kind of like a little feedback. The statement, the one sentence here, I just feel like it's not concise enough. It doesn't explain, one, the efforts, and two, the concerns for those. The statement is probably going to be publicly put out, and then it doesn't inform those who are not aware of what's going on, what this is geared towards. So I'm just concerned about it not being concise enough. It doesn't have enough context to it, but I yield to tactful. Parliamentarian, sorry.
No, that's fine. So I wanted to address a few points. So one brought up by Sakile. I just wanted to I guess note that praising administration and holding administration accountable aren't mutually exclusive. And then I just wanted to talk about praising administration. So Senate statements can do that. I think that I proposed one at the end of last Senate term with Remsha, and I just wanted to read an excerpt of something within the Senate PPMs, which is a statement's purpose is recognition or affirmation by the Senate. So for example, a Senate statement could be a message of solidarity with some students, to thank the administration for an action that has happened or been decided, to show support of an MLK Day speaker, etc. So it's still up to Senate whether they think that this is worthy enough of being a Senate statement. But within the Senate PPM, it does show that there's at least a time and place where you could praise administration. And then I suppose to circle back to Leah, saying that you wanted to wait a few weeks. If that is the case, even though the Senate has the ability to vote on this tonight, it doesn't have to sit on the table. Even if you, so even if you do have that ability, you still can motion to table it until next meeting. And so I just wanted to make sure that people were aware of that. I yield.
Senator Rogers, you still have the floor.
I yield.
Senator Liang.
Yeah, cool. So I guess like 3 things. The first thing is I probably would say the same as Lee. We kind of want to wait and see sort of more. And then the second thing is I feel like had I not known about like what this is talking about, I wouldn't really know exactly what we're praising, which is sort of the concern that I have. I think on the third level, like, so I guess like the third item, I think we should be cognizant of not just the purpose of statements, but also what do they do. I think that when we make a statement, right, everyone sees it. And I think the question sort of I have for you, Senator Baker, is sort of like, is it your intention that by establishing this precedent, we end up building more productive relationships with administrators? Or is it simply that like we should have a precedent in which we sort of recognize and sort of like signal boost all of the things that administration is doing? If it is indeed the second thing, I think, I guess like to address some of the other concerns that have been raised, we can also issue statements that are very critical of administration. And this certainly wouldn't be, out of the ordinary. Like, I think it could be interesting to consider a precedent in which we not only recognize when the administration is not doing, when the administration is doing things that are good, but then also when the administration is doing things that are bad. Like, what if we just had more statements? And I guess like that's sort of a conversation that, we might want to have as sort of the weeks go on and we sort of see the after effects of all of the decisions that the administration has been making regarding anti-racism implementation, as well as, I guess, like all of the current COVID guidelines and so forth. I think that it could be the case that, we as Senate can do both. And not only do we do both, but we sort of ping the administration saying, hey, we're watching, and we're still watching. And next week, we're still going to be watching. And every time we release a statement, we're just reminding you that we're watching. I yield my time.
Senator Baker.
Yeah, thank you guys. And thank you for the we're watching. And so I'm happy to table this and to take in, some more feedback and to, come back with a edited statement. In terms of the purpose of the statement, going to what Amanda was saying, I don't think this is to, I don't think it's really either of those. I believe in using statements as critique. I believe in using statements as, just acknowledgement. And where I was coming from with wanting to write this, it was more a sense of social responsibility, right? So when a member of the student body contacts me, they're on video call and they're just stressed and pressed and obviously, shaken. I entertain that, and I'm like, okay, of course, like I'm here to help. And so I felt I should respond the same way when things worked out. You know, I didn't want to be that person that when things were wrong, I'm ready to, you know, go into the weeds. But then when they work out, I'm like, oh, we're just gonna forget about it. You know, I felt that that wasn't establishing a healthy culture in our campus. And as a student leader like you guys, I wanted to put equal emphasis on the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? Well, that's too negative. So the great, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so that's sort of where I was coming from. But I'm happy to, I'm more than happy to table this and sort of put in some of your suggestions for next week. I don't want to wait, you know, for weeks to see how this ends up going, because again, this statement's just on the efforts and the response to students, and it's not necessarily on its effectiveness. And I want to make sure that this is done in a timely manner. So I don't want it coming out like 3 months after the decision was made.
Do you yield?
Yes, I yield.
All right, Senator Tome. Also, I'm going to recommend that if we're sort of wrapping up, that we try to close the speakers list or get through the remaining people and not add too many new people to the speakers list. Because again, we're trying to keep the Senate meetings relatively short. And if we, especially if there is going to be a motion to table, then potentially the discussion could carry into the future weeks. So that being said, Senator Tome.
Yeah, I think tabling it for now, I do not want to completely dismiss this. I do think it's an initiative that we should discuss more. But I think tabling it for now would be smarter, because I have friends who've been affected by this. And I've heard some concerns about this too, even after the decision has changed. And I think Sakila can talk a little bit more about that. And the way ISAC has been operating, from my knowledge, this semester, I'm not sure whether that is adding to it or contradicting it. I know, as Sakila has said, that ISAC has been holding the administration really accountable for what they should be doing. And I think, I'm not sure after the conversations he and other members had, whether this will be counterproductive to that too. I yield.
Senator Shangasa.
Yeah, so I know we've exhausted this, but I just as a general thing, and I guess as a personal belief, it's very important things that like come out of SA to the public. And I just think that already there's this sentiment out there that SA doesn't do anything. At least I had that before I came to SA, and I probably certainly still have that to some extent. And if this is what's going to be coming out of SA, it's like, okay, I just feel like there's more that we can do in the front of advocating for students and just like doing that, as opposed to, you know, writing like, I guess, statements that praise the university for doing their job or things like that. I think like Amanda said, I think that statement to some extent could help, but only when it comes to building relationships or really just doing anything advancing in the way of advancing the work that we're already doing. But what this does here, it seems like, okay, we're gonna like put out a statement and say that we support something, and then it seems like that's the end of it. What we're not getting from this statement is what are the impacts? What's going to happen after we vote and say, okay, this is our position as student government. Is there anything that we're going to get from this office, from endorsing them? And lastly, and I've already said this, but I just feel like it's our job to keep the school accountable, and however that shows up, like if that shows up as somehow accountable, if that shows up somehow as exceptional, then great. But you know, I've worked on this, and my judgment personally on this is that they did their job. It is their job to listen to students. It is their job to figure out whether students, when students have grievances, whether students have concerns, and to respond to them. And that response shouldn't necessarily be treated as any kind of like exception, and certainly not, you know, something that we should vote on. And like, you know, just as an advice, like I said, we've written, you know, we've sent a card saying thank you for showing up to our town hall. We've written cards to Jane Gatewood when you know, in our like, the last meeting I had with Jane Gate, which it was like, okay, Sahile, you know, why is it that you're only coming up to us with concerns and not you know, like I guess praises? I said, okay, unfortunately the voices that get echoed more are the critical voices. However, here's something, you know, a Facebook post that a student posted that said, thank you, you know, I'm very grateful to be in the University of Rochester, and that was very well received. Do I think that Jane's response to international students was exceptional? Sure. Do I think that we should write a statement about it? No. I yield.
Senator Liang.
I would encourage all of us to sort of think about, I guess, like us as an advocacy body, but then also us like senators as some sort of unified movement where we are all a part of a movement that is for students. I think given that there are a lot of really complex sort of like rhetorical dynamics that take place between senators, or I guess SA as a whole, as well as the administration. And I think given this, it is my opinion that we should table it, not only to have a discussion on like what can be added, what can be changed, but also to have a discussion on like what are sort of what Sakila is saying, like the political implications. How will this affect those like really minute, really delicate interactions that I guess ISAC has already been having with the administration in the context of, if we release this as a statement and it goes public, how will people react to, not just to us, but also to the administration? But more importantly, how will students change, how will students' relationship with SA and the advocacy we're doing change, if at all? So these are sort of like more minute considerations that I think are very important when we look at sort of the purpose of student government as a whole. I yield my time.
All right, is there any other discussion? Typhoon is pointing out that there's Senate PPM Article 4, Section 3 for more background on legislation. I was going to say something similar, that we do have certain definitions that might be useful for senators to look at for legislation, including statements. So also, just so you know, if no one else has any other points of discussion, this will go into a vote, because I believe we are still on the, I don't think anyone's made a motion to table this statement officially. Senator Tome?
Motion to table the statement.
I'm going to assume that that was motion to table statement of support for Center of Education Abroad's decision. Is there a second on that motion? Senator Liang? Is there any discussion on the motion to table? Seeing no further discussion, we're going to move into a vote by unanimous consent. So is there any dissent on the motion to table the statement? Seeing and hearing none, it has been tabled. Is there a motion? Senator Tome?
Motion to adjourn. Is this where we at?
Is there a second on the motion? Senator Liang? Is there any dissent on the motion to adjourn? Seeing and hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.